All right, everybody. Well, welcome today. Today we are welcome to our talk with Doc. Today I'm excited. It's going to be a talk that a lot of people don't think about a lot, and I'm glad that we're able to change that today. We are going to be talking on how to welcome individuals who are visually impaired into your ministry. And a topic that I think we need to dig a lot deeper in. And today it's my honor to have two guests join me. One's a longtime friend, Judy Redlich, and the other, our other guest hasn't been able to join quite yet. It's Carla Keirns. She may be tied up with patient, and I'm sure she'll be joining us just as soon as she possibly can. But Judy, welcome. Why don't you go ahead, just take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Thanks, Doc. It's really a pleasure to be on with you. Yeah, Doc and I have been friends for a while, and it's really fun to talk to another person who has experienced disability not only in his own life, but in his son's life, and think of creative ways to help people more understand about disabilities. Well, I was born 2 months premature, and my mom and dad had to come to the realization of what were they going to do when they found out that I couldn't see, and that was because of the oxygen content not being regulated properly. So as my mom reminds me, I could see for maybe a week or two, but because I was in the incubator, the oxygen content was unstable, and that detached my retinas. So when they brought me home from the hospital a month later at the right birth weight, about 4 pounds, because I was only 3 pounds when I was born, and the doctors had a choice: were they going to stick me in an incubator, or was I going to die? And I am so glad that they chose to keep me alive. And not having sight doesn't really bother me. The one thing I cannot do is drive, and I do not want to drive a self-driving car. So
yes.
I went to the Lutheran parochial school system, and I was the first kid with a disability to go through the Lutheran school system. So my mom and dad were always my advocates. And mom would stay up late just to make sure that I got everything I needed for school. And I remember one thing was phonics. Remember NESS, LESS? I don't know if they teach that in school today, but in years past, we all had to really memorize our phonics. And so she would cut them out of sheets of paper. They'd have the print on it, and she would braille the sheet first and then cut them all out. And they were in a little Christmas card box that lay on the shelf. So the teacher, whenever the students could use their phonics, she would give me my little box, my little Christmas card box with my little cutout phonics. So mom was doing those kinds of things all of my life as I was a child. And even as an adult, mom was a great cheerleader in my life. I went on to Lutheran High School South and graduated from Missouri Valley College with a BA in psychology and broadcasting and journalism. And then I went out for a year to the West Coast, was a folk singer, and then came back to the greater St. Louis area and started being a part of the staff at New Life Evangelistic Center, who eventually built 2 Christian television stations at the Here's Help Radio and TV network. And in 2008, I started working as the area director for Johnny and Friends Missouri, and it expanded quite a bit. In 2017, I decided that church engagement was really my passion. So I did that from 2017 to 2020, and now I am pursuing some new adventures. I am a certified Christian life coach, and I love to help people find their highest potential. And I do radio on KSIV Radio in St. Louis, Missouri on 3 stations. And I am the activities outreach specialist 1 day a week for the St. Louis Society for the Blind in St. Louis. So that's what, little nutshell.
That's awesome. Busy. We're glad to have you. And Carla, Keirns, welcome. We're glad to have you here just in time. We're just going through and everybody kind of introducing themselves. So if you want to just take a minute or two and introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Yeah. So I am in Kansas City, Missouri, so the other side of the state along I-70. And I am the mother of a blind child. So I have a little boy who is 7 who may make a cameo. He is legally blind due to a condition called albinism. So he's the kind of person you will look at and say, wow, that hair is blonde. But it causes a developmental challenge in the development of the retinas. And so he is the kind of kid who he's got 2200 vision, which is the threshold of legal blindness. And his teachers of the visually impaired have assessed that to read comfortably, he needs 24 to 28 point font. To sort of reflect on that, standard 12 point font, if you blow it up from an 8.5 by 11 to an 11 by 17, you're getting to about 14 to 16. If you blow up a kindergarten worksheet from its standard size to a size he can read, you can't get it on an 11 by 17. You'd have to take it to Kinko's and blow it up bigger than that. Or we've been told to do it on 2 sheets. So I have been, he's 7, so I've been involved with the Missouri Council of the Blind, the National Federation of the Blind, the National Organization of Parents of Blind Children, and DESE, the State Education Department, has a blind task force on the education of the blind. And I've sort of progressed up the advocacy ladder as I've tried to figure out what do I need to know, and then over time, what can I teach others? But I would not presume to know anywhere near as much as Judy, who has the personal experience and the life experience that I do not. But I can certainly tell you what makes my little guy feel welcome.
Right. Well, I want to thank both of you ladies for coming. You're coming in with just a wealth of information and two very important perspectives for us as we talk on this important subject today. One from an individual, an advocate who herself is blind, and then 2 as a parent raising a child who is blind, visually impaired. So I think that's very important for us as we kind of think through this and see how churches especially can come alongside families and these amazing individuals as well. So first, I just want to kind of throw out, for you all, I think, most people have a fairly good idea. But I'd like to just kind of first to start things off, what are some of the, common challenges that individuals who are visually impaired come across, whether that, is at schools or churches or just being out in the community? I can think of, several, but, I'm sure there are challenges that I don't think of. So what would be some challenges that would be important for ministry leaders to be aware of so that we can help with that?
I think stereotype is still, even the Americans with the Disabilities Act was implemented in the 1990s, but things haven't quite changed. And I think that stereotyping, people think that if you're blind, you often can't hear as well. They think that they will offend you if they ask the wrong question. In fact, somebody just yesterday, I was at a meeting and they said, I hope I won't offend you, but I'd like to ask you a question. That should be a statement that you never say to a person with a disability. If they don't want to talk about something, they won't talk about it. And they'll just say, hey, I don't want to talk about it. But it makes us feel different and singled out if you use that phrase. So I think stereotype is one of the main challenges that we still face.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great thought. Carla, how about for you?
I think people get scared and freaked out. So when I sign up for summer camp or for other activities, I'll often minimize what his needs might be because I don't want them to be scared and say, oh, they can't handle him. I think people get scared.
Yeah.
When the truth is that what I'll say is, he's got pretty good functional vision. He's going to look like most other kids, but we might need large print. He might need to sit up close. He might need to be engaged in a different way, and that will help you with what accommodations he needs. I really feel like asking the person what accommodations would be helpful to them is just a baseline core special needs disability principle that never does you wrong.
Right.
Right. I agree. And I think being creative, don't just think, oh, I don't know how to handle this child with a disability, but think about how can I make this exercise or thing that we're doing so creative that that child will want to come back. I know, I didn't even realize that churches were unwelcoming because I grew up in the Lutheran church, and my church, they just accepted me for who they are. I mean, I played with the rest of the kids, and I had Sunday school. I had all my Sunday school lessons in Braille. My mother made sure Lutheran Church Missouri Synod really did a great job of providing quarterly Sunday school material. So I was reading the Braille just like my other counterpart friends in my class were reading print. There are things that you can do, and if you pray, God will give you unique and creative ideas on how you can best work with the person. And don't be afraid to be a friend. It's one thing to serve a person with a disability, but you know what? If you don't go beyond serving, that person will feel that service aspect and will never really think of you as a friend. A lot of people with disabilities don't have many friends. They might have caregivers, but those caregivers aren't most of the time friends. They're caregivers. And so not that blind people have, visually impaired people have caregivers a lot of time. I mean, usually we don't, but I mean, the point is it's really important to make friends with the person with a disability, because then you've got a friend for life. You got a loyal friend. You can hang out together. You can do hobbies together, and that's so important.
Absolutely, and just kind of piggybacking on that, I think that's one thing that's so important for us to never lose sight of wherever we're at, whether it's in church or school or community. It doesn't matter what the disability is. They're individuals as well. They are created in the image and likeness of God. There is absolutely nothing wrong with them. And we need to love them for who they are and accept them for who they are, and be friends with them and welcome them. And it's one of the things, it's honestly, whenever I run a disability ministry, or whenever I help someone in starting up a disability ministry, I always say I only have one requirement for you to be able to serve in that disability ministry, and that requirement is, can you be a friend? And that's really what it comes down to, is being a friend. And I think what all humans do, all people do, when they don't understand something, and a lot of people don't understand blindness. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to work with the individual. They become afraid of it, and so their response is to back up and just stay away. And that's absolutely not the right thing to do. That's definitely not what God did. Jesus would go, he'd go right up to the people. We need to be the same. We need to be more like Jesus and welcome everybody into our presence, and welcome everybody into the church. So, let's then start talking about a church. And whether you have a disability ministry or not, I don't care. You still need to be able to welcome all people. You need to welcome individuals who are visually impaired and who are blind into your church and your ministry. What are some things that you can do to actually, welcome these people, these individuals into your church?
Well, when they come, you could ask them to, how can you're here, we're glad you're here, make friends with them. Hey, how can I best serve you? And that's with an adult. Now, if they're a child, you can talk to the parents if you want, but don't ever talk beyond the child. Don't be condescending to the person who is blind.
Right.
So if a person is blind and they're with someone else, do not just talk to the other person. I do this little counter thing with the restaurant where I go up with a friend and we pretend that we're there for dinner, and the restaurateur talks to my friend and said, "What does she want?" That is so rude. And you know what? I am not really good at responding happily back to them. So I usually say, "Well, why don't you ask she? And she will answer your question." So remember, welcome the person. Don't look beyond their disability, and welcome them like you'd welcome someone else. And if they come alone, you could even say, "Hey, can I get you a cup of coffee?" And for heaven's sakes, don't fill it half full, thinking the poor blind person can't hold a cup of coffee straight.
Right. And guys, I'm actually going to do a screen share here just a minute, because Judy has actually put together, a little list with all of this, so that we can see some of this. So is that showing there now? You all see that?
Excellent. Yeah.
Is it showing? Yeah, that's showing the main screen now. All right. So, Judy, we've got the first three up on the list. You're just now talking about the first one, looking beyond their disability. Go ahead, continue.
Oh, look beyond the disability and find something that you might have in common with that person. Hey, the weather's really nice out today. Do you like to walk? Do you like to, whatever. I mean, just start a conversation. Think about making a new friend. What would you say to that new friend? And don't think above that or rethink it. Just ask the same questions. And then when you're in doubt, ask the person. If they are, if you don't know how to guide them to their seat, if you can say, "Hey, how can I best help you find a seat?" And then they'll tell you, "You know what? We have mouths, and we can hear you talking to us. So just ask."
Right. Yeah, and it's amazing. I've seen people when they've been trying to talk to someone who's blind, and all of a sudden you hear them start shouting to the person, because they think they can't hear. Occasionally they may also have vision or hearing problems, but that's pretty rare. It's not related. We need to treat them again like everybody else, and this kind of goes right along with everything else in ministry. We need to focus on their abilities, not their disability.
Right.
We can't allow their vision or lack thereof be what defines them. That's not who they are. So let's not make that be a big part of it. Let's find all the other wonderful things about them and celebrate that. So go ahead, Judy, continue.
My mother was the Elmer's glue, tracing wheel, and glitter queen. So you talk about crafts. Oh my goodness. My mother worked with the teachers to build, to show them how to do crafts with me. And we love crafts. I know that I think in pictures today because of my mom always describing things to me and my mom making sure that my books, if they were little reading books, like little Tom and Dick and Jane books or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I still have some of those books where she would put fur on the pages or different cloth samples, and she'd cut them out in the shape of the animals on the pages. I remember for a kindergarten birthday, kids gave me alphabet. I had a flannelgraph set of alphabet letters. I had a bracelet set of alphabet letters that you could put all the letters together and hook them together like bracelets and necklaces. And then I had a larger set that was about 3 inches high that you could also hook together. And I loved it because these were things that I could feel, I can manipulate, and I can learn the same things that my sighted counterparts were learning. So And I still have my first grade arithmetic book, and my mother used Elmer's glue to make the circles and the balls in the middle, count 10 balls, count 5 balls. And then she put little braille things in those squares. But she knew how to do that, and the teachers just picked up on that. Sandboxes are great. You know how much a blind person loves to play in the sand? It's a great way of creating. And you could get your imagination rolling, and other kids enjoy playing in the sand just as much as I do. And you know what? We all get sand thrown in our faces by each other. So it's no big deal. I just can't see it coming.
So
All right.
what I find is that the kinds of tactile modifications of the thing you were going to do anyway that Judy's talking about, when we bring them to my son's school, he's not the only one who enjoys them. Multisensory learning and thinking about, is there another way to do this, actually benefits everyone, especially when you're talking about little ones.
So true. Yeah, a
Play.
lot of people learn so many different ways, and the sensory learning, a lot of people, that's how they learn best.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Play-Doh, clay.
right.
Elmer's glue makes great outlines, and now they have puff paint. You can make outlines with that. You can even give kids things to write on. Like you can even make raised lines on a piece of paper for them. They have tools to do that, and kids can write right in those lines. They can color within those lines. I mean, sewing. You can put little things so that they can know how to make darts in their dresses. I mean, I had just be creative, and have fun with it. Don't dread it, because you won't be able to think straight, and you won't be able to think creatively, and you'll just think more of the person than the creativeness. So I'm just saying, use your imagination and have a great time with it, and involve the person you're working with.
Right. All right, Judy, how about number 2 on here? Get to know them as a person, ask them questions, become friends, and build relationships with them.
Oh, yeah. All of that is so true. And just remember, how would you like someone to treat you when you came to a church for the first time? Would you want them to be standoffish? Or would you like them to find something that you all have in common and become a friend to you and make you feel welcomed?
Right. Right. And we kind of touched on that earlier. Let's just be a friend and welcome them. And I think that's the other part too, that when we're in the church situation and in the Sunday school situation, we need to encourage other kids to welcome them. And what I find is frequently the other kids automatically do. They don't even think about it. And it's the adults. It's us who have the barriers and have the problems with it. And we just need to think like a child and do it. And so those are great reminders for us. But if you don't see, the other kids being welcoming, we need to help with that. And one of the best ways by doing that is by example. We have to lead by example and show how to be the friend with it. So what about number 3? It says, when in doubt, ask them. Don't assume and make decisions about them. Ask them directly. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely true. Don't be afraid to ask those questions you were always afraid to ask and didn't want to offend someone. And remember that statement I told you never to say? I hope I don't offend you, but I'd love to ask that question. So never use that phrase. Just ask your question. Would you want people to ask you questions that they'd like to know about you? Curiosity is so important, and it shows people that you are interested in them and not just interested in yourself.
Right.
And don't assume. Don't think, oh, I don't think Johnny can eat this roll as a whole roll. I think I have to cut it in 4s for them. Well, if I was Johnny and I knew everybody else got a whole roll and they didn't have theirs cut up, I'd be kind of offended, like, well, why did you think I'd like that? Or even like I mentioned about the coffee. You don't know how often people have given me a cup of coffee half full, and I love coffee. And when they give me a cup of coffee half full, I'm like, really? So anyway, so don't Assume constraints will kill you, and it'll kill your friendship with someone else.
Right. All right. We'll go to the next one here. It says, blind children love crafts too. Be creative in adapting craft projects for them if they are in your Sunday school class. Get them involved in the creativity.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that. We pretty much talked about that. Cement. Blind kids love to put their hand in cement and make a handprint just like everybody else. Don't be afraid. Don't be so overprotective either. Oh my goodness. I think that's one thing that my mom and dad, they wished when I went out to be a folk singer in Oregon that they probably hadn't taught me to be so independent. But it's worth it to be independent, and it's worth it to give your children or the children that you're teaching the most independence that they can have. And that goes along with assumed constraints. Ask them, hey, how do you feel about putting your hand in the cement today? We're all making handprints.
Also, tactile elements like Judy talked about before. So when I look at the crafts that they do at camps and places that are set up for blind kids, there's a lot more felt, there's a lot more pom-poms, there's a lot more glue-on jewels or puffy stickers so that you can feel them. And again, all the kids can use those. When I brought a soccer ball and a basketball with beepers and bells inside so that you can hear them to my son's kindergarten, the teacher said, oh, this is wonderful. I'll save it special just for him. And I said, please don't do that, because it's a regulation soccer ball. All the kids can play with it, and then he can play with his friends. And if they break it, if they pop it, if whatever, I'll buy you a new one. I promise.
Great.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. I didn't really use a beeper ball, but I know kids that there's even beep ball teams that blind people are on all over the United States.
Yeah, they do it for the kids every year in Kansas City.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. And if you're looking at guiding someone, whatever you do, ask them, how can I show you to your seat? Don't ever say, how can I guide you best? Would you like someone to say that to you? Or if you want them to turn a certain way, don't just move shoulders. That happened to me recently. I'm going, why did they do that? And so you can ask them, how can I help you best to get to your seat? Or, hey, let's take a walk. How can we do that together? And they'll tell you. So there are, the sighted guide is where you take the back of the person's arm. The blind person takes the back of your arm, and then you walk in front and the sighted person walks in back. One thing you never want to do is you never want to take their arm, because they'll be in front and you'll be in back. And if they fall, you're going to feel like a fool. And they're going to, they're going to be scared. Why did that happen? But if they're behind you, if you fall first, you know what that blind person's going to do?
They'll stop.
Yeah, they're going to let go. And so some people like to use the sighted guide where they touch your shoulder. And I've not used that, but other blind people have used that. So you just ask them, how can I best hang out with you? Do you grab my arm? What do you want me to do? But never be the one that has the blind person in front of you and you take their arm. Don't do that. And you can show them the sighted guide if they don't know how to use it. Like the little kids may not know how to use that, but you can do that. Say, hey, let me take your arm, and then go for it. And then you can always tell them, hey, we're coming up to a step, or we're coming up to the staircase with up steps. So, just do it naturally, though. Don't be so scared about running the person into something that you aren't natural with them.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's pretty much the next one we just talked about then. Ask them how you can assist them best and guide them and help them see their world. The next one your list then is, don't be afraid to ask them what they can and cannot see, because each person's vision level is unique.
Carla, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah. So, each So when we say blind or visually impaired, it's partly about what you can see, and it's partly about what is the most efficient way for you to do things. So it may be that my son can see the steps, but it's still safer and more efficient for him to use a cane. And it's it can be tough to describe what you can and can't see, and actually quite confusing for folks who have normal vision. But again, I think you just ask, is the thing about can and can't see is what you want to ask is, what do you see if you're talking to a kid? Because if you say, can you see that? They can see something if they are like my son and have partial sight, but what they see may be different than what you see. And so if you ask, tell me what you see, rather than can you see that, then they can describe to you the level of detail that they can see that you wouldn't be able to guess.
That is so true, Carla. That is so true. You know, transportation is something that we as blind people really, oh my goodness, I remember when my kids were in high school. Actually, I didn't say anything about my family. I have two children. I have a husband, a wonderful husband, and I have two children. Melody's married to a firefighter, and she's an interior designer. And our son David is a marketing man for a company that he works for. But when I was raising my children, all these other moms would go to Mother's Club and just stuff. And transportation was always a hassle for me. And I got to the point where if I had to ask for transportation 3 times and nobody offered from then on to pick me up, I just didn't go. And I'm sorry, but we often feel like, do we really have to always ask, can't someone offer transportation? So if you're in a church and there are people that don't drive, ask them, would you like us to provide transportation? And they will love you forever. I mean, that is such an important question. But then use the same rules with them that you use for others that you provide maybe van transportation for. And they can ride the van just like anybody else. So, but don't go out of your way to make special trips on the way home for them and stuff like that. You know, treat them like everybody else. If you're providing transportation, provide it for them too. And if you don't provide transportation, but you have persons with visual impairments that want to come to your church, offer it.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So number 8 on your tip is provide the bulletin or words to songs in alternative formats, such as emailing them in advance, putting them in 18 to 26 point type, making sure if projected on the screen, they are large enough for them to read.
Carla talked earlier about her son needing 24 to 28 font. Well, because of different sight losses, people need the larger font, 18 to 26. You know, with today's technology, a lot of blind people have Braille displays. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is do I need to hold it differently?
No, we got it.
You're good.
This is my Braille display, and it does just about anything. It even goes online, and you can hook it to see my flash drive on it. I just took something out of my Word documents and put it on the flash drive, and we are reading it together. So you can send people the words to the songs on email. You can send them the bulletin, because a lot of blind people have Braille displays, and a lot of people who have CCVs to magnify what you send them. If you send them in the mail in advance, they can prepare it for themselves and bring it on Sunday. Also, worship music. It's important to provide the words for the songs. And if you have people who have talents who are visually impaired, Well, they might be able to see the screen, or you might have a television there where you can run the words on it for them, and they can stand close to the TV and watch those words as they sing. Or again, you can provide them in email form, or somebody can read them to someone who might want to braille them with their braille typewriter in
Right.
advance.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in here real quick. There's so many things right along this line that you can do in your church setting to help out. And I'll just share a few things that I've done with ours. One, when I went, especially for our adult and our teen classes, I bought Bibles for those classes to make sure everyone could have a Bible in there when we're doing the lesson. Well, when I bought the Bibles, I went out and I bought the largest font Bible I could find to get. So we've got 18 point type for our Bibles, extra large print Bibles. And so that really helps. And we've got a couple of individuals who have a hard time, and that's about all they can see, with that. And so that makes a difference. So, just even making simple little things like that, it honestly didn't cost a lot more. It actually, I was able to get them on sale, and they were cheaper than the regular point type. But other things, I'm never going to forget one of the first little guys I dealt with in our ministry who was visually impaired, and he had, he was legally blind, but he had what's called tunnel vision, which means he could just basically see, a pinpoint. He couldn't see everything else around, and so that was difficult for him. Well, he could. When he was in our worship, he could never see our screen that had the videos and everything going with that. And as I talked with him, it goes exactly with, what Carla was talking about earlier, and you too, Judy, in talking with the families, talking with the individuals, see exactly what they can see. And I found out with talking with them that he actually is able to see quite well if he's close enough to be able to see everything. So guess what? We had an old TV that was sitting in storage, not being used, that was, like a 30-inch TV. We put it on a cart, hooked it up where we were able to feed that live, because we already had it being shown on the screens up front. Well, we just wired it so it also went to that one. He sat in a chair, and he literally sat 2 inches in front of that TV. And his face, the way it lit up that first Sunday, that he actually got to see the worship and see the videos and truly participate, is a memory I'm never going to forget. I've got goosebumps again thinking about it. But how did that happen? Because we talked to the family, we talked to the individual, and saw, oh my gosh, this is a simple fix. And guess what? It didn't cost us a single dime. We used what was already around. And that's the thing I really want ministry leaders to know, that, a lot of the things we're talking about, we're not talking about added expense and money. We're not talking that you have to go and create a whole Braille curriculum and all these things. If you grow enough ministry and have enough people, that may be something to look at in the future. But there are so many things that you can do before that to welcome individuals who are visually impaired into your ministry and let them feel loved, and so that you can be able to share Jesus with them. So, just points with that go on. But let's move into number 9. And I love this one. Pray for them and ask the Lord to give you anointed ideas for how best to encourage and include them in your congregation.
And believe me, he will. He'll give you some ideas you're thinking, really, God? You really want me to do that? But, God is a God of surprises. And he will do that. And it'll make your life with that person with the visual impairment so exciting, because you're going to go, God, what are you going to give me this time?
Right.
And that excitement will spill over into the family. Get to know their families, as Doc has talked about. Mom might have some ideas for you, and you might even do some things that mom goes, whoa, that's a great idea. I'm going to try that at home.
Yeah. And then the last one, get to know their family and find ways to serve and involve them in your congregation too.
Yep. So important, so important. And remember, people with visual impairments, just like people with various disabilities, have talents and giftings. Find out what they are and use them on your Sunday morning services. If they're a good reader, let them read the scripture in front of the congregation. I wanted to say one thing about links to songs. If you don't have any way of making, like if it's a person that just reads Braille and they don't have a Braille display, you can always send them the links to the songs in advance, and there, I bet they'll memorize those words before Sunday.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And then lastly on here, Judy, you've got a tip on here for rules for service dogs, something good for us to remember. And you said, don't talk, touch, or feed them because they are working for their owners. Do you want to just touch on that?
Absolutely right. I didn't mention my seeing eye dog, Thelma, who's laying right here at my feet being so sweet. And she's a yellow lab. And this is my second seeing eye dog. I've had seeing eye dogs now for about 15 years. But the whole point is you don't ever want to distract a dog from working for their owner. So that's why, and people are a lot of times more attracted to the animal than they are to the person because they feel safer talking to the animal. And so if someone should start talking to my animal, I also don't say, oh, you got to stop that. Don't do that to my dog. You know, remember, people need to be educated. So if someone starts talking to my dog, you know what I say? I say, hey, you can talk to me, but let me give you the 2 T's and the F. Don't ever forget this. Don't talk, touch, or feed a service animal because they are working for their owner. And this dog is talking to me, working for me. And you wouldn't want me to fall down the steps because you're talking to my dog, would you? So it lightens it up a little bit. It teaches them a little fact of life. And it also gets them to talk to you and feel more comfortable talking to you.
Yeah, that's great to remember. Let's just shift gears a little bit. What are some possible specific things that a volunteer? How can we get volunteers involved and really help them? Kind of in this process of welcoming. These have been fabulous tips and great things that ministries can do. But how about other ideas for volunteers? With them, any tips there? Either one of you might have.
Well, Carla, you have anything you'd like to say first?
No, go ahead.
You sure? Okay. Well, one of the things I love is when I have someone to offer to come to my house and help me make sure my clothes match. Because as my mother, anyone else who knows me will tell you, my favorite saying is, I never want to go out of the house not matching. If I don't match, I don't go anywhere. So that's a big thing. And that, because it's first impression, second impression, and makeup. If you ever want to help someone learn how to put on makeup, that is a great thing. And they might say, nobody's ever asked me. And I've always wanted to wear makeup, but nobody ever showed me how to put it on. So I didn't want to look like a clown. One time, I'll tell you this little story. I accidentally put black mascara on my lips because I had my lipstick and my mascara about the same little ones. Luckily, I went to church. My husband didn't even see it. But someone, when I walked into church, one of my trusty friends who can be honest with me said, hey, Judy, did you put mascara on your lips? They're black. And I'm going, oh, oops. And I was leading praise and worship that morning, so we quickly went into the bathroom and got that all straightened out. But anyway, reading mail, writing out checks. Do you know how much junk mail you get? Well, for a person who is visually impaired, think how that piles up if nobody reads it to them. And we have scanners. Yes, that's true. Most of us do. But every piece of mail can't always be taken care of by just scanning it and doing what you have to do with it, because you have to sign checks. You have to make out bill. You have to pay the bills. Sorting papers and files, so important. If you have to use your scanner for everything that you have to file, it gets so boring and monotonous. Checking expiration dates on products that they have in their cabinets? Oh yeah. Um, Projects around the house like changing smoke alarms on batteries, light bulbs, um, doing projects like, oh, checking their yard. If you do yard work, volunteer to help a blind person who has a house. Um, the yards need to be taken care of, and I use a hand mower. When we first got married, I use the hand mower all the time. You know, that's the one that you push and it doesn't have a motor in it. It just goes, and cuts your grass for you. And I love that. But a lot of people don't have those. And so if you do yard work, you can do some of that. Projects together like cleaning, you know, cleaning is a challenge because you can something, but it's not always clean. It might feel smooth, might feel like it has the dirt all off of it, but it may not be clean. So, and these are things you could ask people. Hey, what can I help you with? These are just to give you ideas, because if they say something to you like that, you can say, oh yeah, I can help you do that. Um, Take walks in the neighborhood. Um, Sometimes we just like companionship. Our dogs are great, but learning a new route with your dog sometimes takes a little more sighted help. Because if we want to learn a new route and there's a huge busy street coming up, you think we're going to want to cross with our dog alone? Not for the first or second time. We want to learn that route. Do a
Judy,
visual.
we got a question that came in. I just want to
Okay. Yeah.
touch on, make sure we get that. And I'll throw it out for both of you to answer. And we've kind of somewhat talked about it, but yet we haven't. So the question is, especially on like a weekend in a ministry setting, you've got a child who is visually impaired or is blind, and they need to go to the bathroom. In that, how do you work through? You know, do you end up going through the parent to ask them, child, to figure out how best to help them if they need assistance or not? What's the best route to do that? I think obviously it varies with how old the child is too, with that. But Carla, would you mind speaking
Sure.
into
Yeah.
that?
So, so how old is the child and how independent is the child is the critical piece to that. So, you know, making sure they know where the bathroom is the biggest part of that. And then if they are, you know, over, say, blind kids tend to have very slight delays in potty training, really not much more than you would expect for typical kids. So, so if they're, you know, 3, 4, 5, and they seem to know what they're doing, then they really should just need to know where the bathroom is.
Mm-hmm.
If they have other disabilities or other kinds of delays, then they may need more assistance. And then I would reach out to the parent and let them either help the child or tell you what the child needs.
Great.
Yeah, and for adults, you know, the funny thing about it is people always take you to the biggest stall for the wheelchair users when you're blind. And if you have to go to the bathroom real bad, it takes you an extra 30 seconds to figure out where everything is because the stall's so large. So, so you don't have to go in the stall with them and say, now here, the toilet's on your left, the sink's on your right. Now, if you want to do that, if you walk in the restroom and you say, okay, stalls are straight ahead, sinks are on your left, paper towels are on your right. That is a wonderful way to do it.
Yeah.
And you can just say, how else can I help you? And if they say, no, don't need anything else, then.
Great. One other question that came in, and this is a really good one. You know, a lot of times, and we know when, you know, an individual has one type of sensory deficit, whether it be, you know, vision or hearing or something, and other senses seem to be heightened. And so, you know, the question is, you know, do you find that individuals who are visually impaired, you know, we know a lot of them have heightened, you know, hearing, sensory for their hearing. as a result, are they more sensitive when they're in a loud environment? So if you put them in, like on a weekend, in a children's worship area where it's loud, should we go ahead and offer them, headphones so that it wouldn't bother them, or that, how sensitive is their hearing, or could their hearing be with that? Carla, what do you think with that?
I think that's very individual. So on the one hand, my son can be sensitive to loud noises, and on the other hand, I promise you, you can say something 6 times and he'll be like, what?
Typical child.
That's a typical kid, yeah.
Typical 6-year-old kid. So there can be other sensitivities, but that's so individual that I think, again, it's just a ask kind of question, or give them an open invitation to share. Is there anything else that we can do to make sure that you're comfortable here?
Yeah, you can even do a buddy. Give a child who's blind a buddy. Give a child with a disability, just like you would give any other child with a disability. At the Johnny and Friends family retreats, that was the first time somebody ever offered me a buddy. It was great, man. I got to do anything I wanted to do and enjoy the campground and wear the buddy out. It was fun. But I'd never been offered a buddy before in my life. So you can offer someone a buddy, and also in crowded, noisy rooms. If you have a buddy, they can really steer you through a lot of stuff that you don't know.
Yeah.
So offer people a buddy.
Yeah. I would also say over-helping is something that is really easy to do, especially for blind kids. So it's not just adults. When my son was 3, all the other 3-year-old girls in his daycare wanted to do things for him that he could do for himself. He, of course, was perfectly happy to have someone else do everything for him. And the teachers actually, and I had to sit and talk with them and say, yes, it's wonderful that you are so helpful, but actually he needs to do things on his own.
So important. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Don't assume they can't do anything,
On the other hand, when he was 2.5 in a different daycare, it was months before anyone told me that he spent the entire recess standing at the side watching the other kids run around, because they were moving too fast for him to keep track of. And once I sat down with the teacher and we did things like get them a soccer ball with jingle bells inside, which, trust me, costs like $3 more than the regular soccer ball. Suddenly he could play with his peers. And if they had said something sooner, he was young, I didn't know either, we could have figured out an answer faster.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we are coming to the top of the hour. I just want to give each of you kind of a parting shot, if you would. What is, one last thing you'd like to share with our listeners on things to make sure that they do or don't do as they welcome individuals who are visually impaired and blind into their churches and into their ministries? Judy, let me start with you.
Be a friend. Ask questions that'll give you clear direction and will help the person realize that you want to be a friend, that you're not just a curious onlooker.
Yeah, very good. Carla.
Don't be scared of offending. And at the same time, it's okay to say, it's great to see you. That's not offensive. That's
right. I'm glad you said that.
That is a great point. Yeah. So we need to remember, we can say it's great to see you to a blind or visually impaired.
Yeah. Or did you watch TV last night?
Yeah.
That's so weird. People go, did you watch TV? Did you hear TV? I'm going, what?
Yeah. They're, again, just like everyone else. So those are great thoughts and finishing up the day. Guys, I want to thank both of you so much. Next week, I'm super excited for next week's talk. Again, going to have a dear friend of mine that's going to be on. Author Jolene Philo will be on. She's authored several different books, but what we're going to be talking on next week, I think, is going to be so vital and key for especially now. And we're going to be talking on PTSD and the special needs family. in talking on what it is, how to see it in kids, how it affects, parents, how parents can be affected by it, and how trauma can enter into all that. And especially at this current time where trauma is alive and well with COVID and all the stay at home, we're going to be seeing a whole different realm of COVID and just all the reaction with that. So next week is going to be such a great and important time to come and see. And if you don't have Jolene's book, go out and get her book on PTSD and children. You can find it on Amazon. Get it, read it before next week, and you'll be ready to hit the road with us. And as usual, go ahead and send in your questions ahead of time. We'd love to have you partner with us. If you enjoy our Talk with Doc webinars and want to help us continue these and support us with it, you can go to soarspecialneeds.org. Again, it's SOAR, SOAR, specialneeds.org/donate and give and just partner with us in doing this. But again, Judy and Carla, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been marvelous. And my hope for everyone who's out there listening today is that we will be more open and do our best in welcoming everybody into our faith communities, and especially be creative in how we can bring in individuals who are visually impaired and help them be a part of that. And let them know it is great to see you today. And with that, everybody, thank you again for being here, and hope you all have a wonderful week. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.